We have some very interesting sessions going on today. First of all is Stasha Batty, who's going to talk to us about modernization and, well, we'll see what else. Thank you so much, Stasha.
Good morning. Thank you. So how many of you have paid with cash in the last month or so? Okay, a few, well done. How many of you have paid with card, tapping, dipping, swiping? How many of you have paid with a mobile phone or a wearable? Well done. How many of you have paid with a QR code? So payments is a really exciting space. That's why all of us are here today. And there's so many choices, so many payment types, many form factors, and ways of implementation, which is why I want to acknowledge everyone in the room today. So how many of you have been involved in really big technology delivery in terms of payments? I'm sure quite a few of you. And if you haven't done it directly, who's managed teams that have been delivering payments, right? Whether you're from a bank or a fintech. And so for anyone in the industry, all of you are unsung heroes. You're always providing the latest upgrade, the migration to a new data center, the updates of networking, new systems, etc., with little to no recognition. And for the payments people around, we are the FBI or the CIA of payments. We always have to know exactly what's going on. We have to be able to fix any problem, but we must do it silently. And our standard motto is, they won't even notice. And so that sounds like a really terrible thing to say, but it's the most important thing to say. Because believe me, we don't want them to notice that payments went wrong, because everybody notices. And we're all the ones that get that telephone call when something has gone wrong. So we look at some of the services that have been delivered in the industry. I mean, how long did it take us to get debit cards, refunds working? And what happened? Nobody noticed. There was no rah-rah, there was no big party, there was no thank you. But believe me, those returns clerks, thank you. Those people that had to fight with customers or wanting their money back, and we gave them a credit note, and our refunds office was outside the store, and we made them go back into the store to get their money or to force them to buy other goods. Those people are very grateful that the customer now can get their money back straight onto their debit card. And it took so much stress out of the system that you don't realize it. And so again, to the unsung heroes in the room, and as the participants of this conference, thank you. So my name is Stasha Batty, as Rinska introduced. Thank you so much. I'm the VP of Payments for the Massmart Group. And my focus for the last 20 years, as some of you have known, because I've worked with many of you in the room on projects, I really care about implementing sustainable services that are reusable, benefit the greater community as a whole, and believe that making something interoperable in the ecosystem allows all of us to win and to make money overall. So let me introduce you to my customer. As you can see, she's tired, she's had a bad day, she's got 2 screaming kids with her. Little Johnny over there failed his maths test again, and she's not sure how much budget she has. She is looking for products on the shelf that are not there, and she didn't check the load shedding schedule, so she doesn't know what she's going to be able to make tonight. So what will her experience be at the till? Will the payments process be complex? Will the transaction decline? And who gets the brunt of her frustration when something goes wrong? Because she's at the end of her tether here. It's at the end of the day. She's looked for all of these products in the store, and now she's at the till and something goes wrong. The cashier. The cashier is the person that has to have the most diplomacy in the store to say, yes, sir, thank you, ma'am. And we don't want friction there. We want friction to go through seamlessly or payments to go through seamlessly because it's at the end of our journey. And so, do you think that our customer cares about this? Right? We care because it's really, really important to us. And so I have to ask in the room, how many of you have got B implemented somewhere in the network? How many of you wish you had B implemented? That's definitely me. And how many of you have told your boss that B is implemented, but when they go to the server room, it's A? Yeah. So I feel sorry for those tech people in A that have to support that, but believe me, that happens a lot more than you really want to know. So we want a lot of less support in the system. We want automation, including automatic recovery of systems. So when there's power outages, when the network goes out, we want systems to just come back to the last point that the customer or the cashier was in their process. And so we all have a superpower. Almost nothing in the merchant space happens without payments. And yet we're the least acknowledged in the business because, again, we'll do it with they won't even notice. And we don't want them to notice. But we want to make it so simple that we don't have the support after hours. So in between A and B is always knocking on the door, the greatest, latest fintech startup wishing us to try out something new. And we love them, right? Most people here, like me, is actually a tech geek, surprisingly. As much as I fight with all of my fintechs and partners around making it simpler, we love new technology. But fundamentally, my customer doesn't care about a minimum viable product. They don't care about the POC or the pilot. And neither do our operations teams, especially when they last in a business for 20 years. Oh, it's still in pilot. Okay. So how many payment types do our customers actually need? And when they have a payment type, how do they want it to work? So some of these solutions are really fantastic, and we love them, and please keep on knocking on our door. We're just not always ready for the appropriate multi-lane retail experience. A minimum viable product is the favorite word of all fintechs, and it shows progress and it gets runs on the scoreboard. And yet it is the swear word for anyone in the merchant space. Because we always have to implement the entire solution, the good and the bad. We have to provide the full service regardless. Ask our ops teams. They're the ones that have to live with the customer experience of that MVP or that POC. So no money or time is allocated to return the program or fix it. And all the project managers have moved off the program and there's no more budget, right? The POC was, okay, it was 2 weeks or it was 6 weeks. Okay, it's working, thanks, bye. And then nobody continues with that. So let's look at why. The approved purchase is not the only use case. It's a use case that most MVPs work on, and we love that. But can we also please work on the return experience, the refund experience? All the merchants in the room are doing two things, offering our customers service or offering them goods. And the customer has a right, with all our acts and protection in the industry, to return those goods or say that they're not happy with the service and they want a refund. And so if you look at all merchants' refunds queues, they're the longest. And it's the most frustrating for customers that it's just not a simple process to get their money back when they return the goods. So just that you get a sense, there's about, we love to throw percentages around, and there's about 1% of all transactions are refunds. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, until there's hundreds of refunds. And if you have a really complex process around refunding the customer their money, and it takes 20 minutes, you just need 25 of those, and you've consumed an entire associate's time for 8.5 hours. So 25 refunds is not a lot of refunds. So can we get this right? And so who is the customer? The cashier, the business owner, call centers, and e-commerce support people are the ones that deal with that customer outcome. And the merchant is always the one responsible for getting the money back to the customer. So even though reverse logistics is difficult, it must be done. And if you look at all the support calls all of us are trying to get out of the system, it's around making sure that the reverse process is as simple as the correct one. And so why is there such dignity in cash? There's a lot of conversation that's happened over the last 2 days around it gives people certainty, it gives them trust, and the most often used word in any payments conference or presentation is cash is king. And that's why. It gives the customer dignity. Cash puts control in the consumer's hand. Digital payments puts control in other people's hands. And so the customer doesn't know where their money is or don't understand where it's going to go, etc. So when I hand my money over to someone, and get something back for services or goods, I've done an exchange. And so sometimes I'll get change out of that too, which is really great. But does the customer know that if they go to an ATM and they do a balance inquiry, the bank's going to charge them a service fee for it? And even if it's 50 cents, that's not the point. The point is they had 50 Rand, they did a balance inquiry, and now they got 49 Rand 50. And then they're so surprised they do another balance inquiry, and now they've got 49 Rand left. And so it's around how we communicate to our customers that what our charges are and why, and that they have value. So we have a natural entrepreneurial spirit in our country, and it's so exciting to see, and more device players are working in the market to allow cash to come out of the system and these vendors to be able to take card payments. But what is the cost? How do they use it? And are they working? So some markets don't even allow cash. And I must just tell you, I've got a 14-year-old daughter who's very tech savvy, except when it comes to payments. She's had a bank account since she was kind of 8 months old. In fact, she's got 2 bank accounts. And she's got an app. She's got a bank card in her hand. And when she goes shopping, she always asks for cash. And so I've had conversations with her to say why. She's the wrong generation to want cash in her hand. And she said to me, Mom, it's because of the certainty. I know how much I've got in my hand, I know how much the product costs, and I know how much I have to give over, and I'm not going to be surprised, I'm not going to be embarrassed if it's declined or if anything goes wrong. So even understand that in all of our spheres of influence, people revert to cash because it feels safe and it gives them dignity. So converting coins to digital, all of us have been talking about how do we take cash out of the system and how we make all payments digital. But have we thought about the realities? So it was discussed this morning that there are ways of dealing with if there's no power, if there's no fuel, etc. But we have to be responsible to our citizens. The car guard who's got the cash now can either pay for his taxi, which he has to pay in cash today for, but if we've paid him through a QR code, how does he get his money? Has he got a retailer next to him that he can get his cash out? Can he pay for all of his goods? Where's this mix between cash and digital that we can make it that the person can operate no matter what they need to do? And so we need to think about data being free, about power being available. How is he going to charge his phone? Has he got a phone? How does he know how to validate how much money is in his account, etc.? And he needs to buy his bread and milk. How does he pay his merchant? Is the wallet that he's got interoperable, and can he just pay? So technology has many advances, and it's made it safe for us to trade. But has it? We are so hard on ourselves in the SA community around moving from one form of payment to another. Mobile money, open banking, and new fintech services have solved tech safety and delivery for money through card. There was a problem to be solved. Checks could no longer be safely delivered in our market. The post office was, the rails that was going to be used, and that's why it's still successful in the US. But we as an organization and as a country needed to find a way to create safe payments. And we did it really well. You heard this morning the Deputy Governor saying how we were the first to do an interoperable ATM service. And we have created payments services that are effective and very successful. And you've seen with Samsung, with MFT and NFC processors, we just brought a whole bunch of payments and wallets into the system with very little work for the consumer or for the merchant. And we can do it again. So how do we protect our customer information? How do we ensure consistency in the network, stability, and power availability? We need to create stable card payment networks across the landscape. And in the industry, and we have a great job of solving a customer problem. And then we do this. So for the people that started in mobile in this, or in mobile and fintech, we all had a mobile phone that had letters and numbers on it. And all of a sudden, SMS became a thing, and we started sending messages to each other. But for the sight impaired and for those that are dyslexic, they became really creative in learning the pattern of their numbers. They became creative about creating a word for their numbers. And the original PIN pad used to be tactile. You could feel it, and even for sight impaired, they could feel what they were doing. Then we went to touchscreen. So now you can't feel the different number letters. And then great technology was introduced to protect somebody in the payments network, maybe the consumer around PIN, and we decided to randomize those numbers. But what we don't think about is the customer and the merchant that has that. That customer that I told you about earlier was not looking at that PIN pad when she typed in her PIN. And then she doesn't understand why her PIN is blocked and her card is blocked and she now needs to go to the bank because somebody decided that that was a great idea. So is this great technology? Absolutely. Is it practical for the customer? Not. The merchants have found creative ways of helping their customer. I heard someone have a great innovation around saying, download the old picture, show the customer where the letters are, and then let's help them find, an 8 has got a TUV on it. So some innovations take things too far without the customer in mind. So there are fintechs in the back room that say that was a success. But what does social media say? Social media is unforgiving, and it's certainly unforgiving for merchants and for banks and for anyone that's interacting with a customer. Everything that goes wrong is now communicated across the world. And so how do we make sure that we're dealing with the bad experience first? We all know how to do the perfect scenario. Can we please spend more time on reversals and refunds, etc., and also around the support around that, and who can log into it, etc. So trialing a concept on standalone devices or in small merchants that you can control the environment, but to scale significantly must be self-sustaining and have automated corrective actions for reverse payment processes, which need to be introduced in all merchants. So how do we encourage innovation and preserve dignity? Simplicity usually wins. I know this as it's been measured with revenue. The more people that have an interoperable solution that's available on multiple platforms that everybody can use more ubiquitously makes money for everyone in the ecosystem because there's more support, there's more clarity around how the processes work, and there are simple solutions that we can use on our current platforms. So I appreciate adding a new platform with PayShap and not using card rails. What are we trying to do? We're trying to get cost out of the system and make it simpler. But there are a lot of benefits to the infrastructure that we've created in this ecosystem. And so think about the number of steps that need to be followed to resolve an issue, and how many calls are being logged, and how many people are being contacted, and how many systems and steps are in the chain. We are great at simplifying systems. Let's do that more. So we are not trying as a merchant to increase engagement at the till. We've got the most powerful device in a card machine. It's as powerful as some of your mobile phones in your pockets today. And we're not allowed to use it. We don't use it for marketing. We don't use it for engaging customers and taking surveys. All that we want to do is get the customer out the door because we think that they've been in our store for an hour or two finding the goods that they want, and now they've got the screaming kid and the hungry kid and they just want to get out. So be efficient, be quick, and use the least amount of space on apps, make them really respond quickly, and have really great recovery systems for when power goes down, when networks go down, and facilitate the customer experience. So we've talked a lot in the last 2 days around really changing the customer's world. And I think that all of us can do that more. So we as payment professionals actually really know what the customer wants. So let's think about the person that's paying and how we can ensure that either the payment process is smooth, simple, or intuitive. And I think that's me. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for the friends, partners, and colleagues that are in the room. Really appreciate it. And I'm going to go to Slido for any questions. So thank you, Stuart. His question is, how can payment providers better serve merchants for the successful delivery of new products? So I think that there's a couple of answers to this. One is have a business case. Tell us how many customers you're going to serve and how ubiquitous this environment is going to be. Think about having stable systems. Think about how you're going to manage support. But a big one I'm going to challenge everyone in the room about is how can we speak to our leaders and the people that hold the budget purse strings in our businesses around putting much more funding around our test environments. I think that payments are so critical and the volume of payments is so big in our industry that having a test environment that may be up 1 week a month or maybe has a secondary person looking after it is not the right way to handle this. How do we put more money behind really strengthening our test environments end to end? Merchants, we've got automated test scripts. We want to test scenarios every day, all day. Then there's no money on cards. You've run out of airtime, etc. So I challenge you to think about really looking at your test environments and upgrading them and making them as good as production environments. Any more questions from anybody? So I suppose one of the things that I would check in with the audience is, are we thinking about the consumer on a more regular basis? We've talked about a lot in the last 2 days. How can we look at that survey that's been done? How can we speak to customers and how can we understand what they need? They fundamentally don't need 10 different payment types. We don't need 10 cards, but we do need a consistent way of paying at the till. And we want to know that if we've paid somebody, that they got our money and that we got the goods and services for that, or if we needed to return it, that we're going to get our money, and that we're going to know when we're going to get our money, that it won't be 7 days, it will be immediate or within a day. And I'm really looking forward to PayShap. I'm working with some partners in the industry, really excited to see what everybody's doing around the PayShap space, around how we're going to facilitate different payment types, maybe cheaper payment types on new rails for all of our citizens. Remember, we just want to give that customer dignity at the till, that they know that whatever they're going to do is actually going to work. Or if it doesn't, I'll challenge all of you to look at changing the way in which you respond with decline messages. There was a time that we simplified, about 100 different decline messages into declined, without giving people an opportunity to understand how they can deal with that customer decline and what the customer needs to do, whether the customer needs to phone the bank, whether they need to put more money in their account, whether they need to up their limit of spending for that day, or the reason. And maybe even with new payment types, we need to get smarter about how we respond to customers with their decline codes. So there's a few more questions here. I think that there's a few more minutes. So a big challenge to cash displacement is the acceptance of non-cash mechanisms. How do regulators promote acceptance of digital payment mechanisms? So I think that we're seeing it with the SARB and PASA, with PayShap, and I think that it's around supporting the industry as a whole, really, around making sure that whatever payment type we use in the industry is interoperable. The rules are clear, people know where their money is, how they're going to get their money back or who they're paying, and to make sure that that payment is successfully concluded. From a consumer education perspective, how are payment providers taking customers along this journey of digitizing payment systems? So I think that there's some really amazing education elements, a lot of good marketing, even the way that the industry has dealt with, tap to pay, etc., click to pay, and even PayShap. I mean, I think that PayShap has been marketed remarkably well. I certainly have used it, and I'm starting to change my behavior around that. And I think it is just really finding a simple message and a simple use case that the customers, it's unambiguous, it's easy for them to understand, it's done in multiple languages, it's done graphically from a process point of view, so that it's really easy for people to understand what we're trying to do in the industry. Is trying to become cashless the right thing for SA, or do we meet merchants and customers where they're at? So I think that, the conversation around cash is always actually around everyone in the room. We care about getting cash out the system because it's expensive. And it's becoming more expensive. We see it as a security risk for our cashiers. We see it as a security risk for our bank branches, etc. But it's not a security risk to the customer. So yes, they may, be attacked or have their money stolen, but they could have had their mobile phone stolen. So whether they had digital money or physical money still doesn't help them, right? And so I think it's around talking more to our customers, and I think we've been talking about that a lot over the last 2 days, around really understanding what they want and what they need, and understanding whether the service that we're trying to offer is actually something that they want. Okay, I've got a few minutes. How do we know which services clients prefer to purchase using digital means versus using cash when both options are available? So I think that's a great question, and honestly, I don't know the answer. All I can do is, explain my own personal experience, probably. So I've got most payment types, I suppose, and it's very situational for me. So an example would be I use my phone to tap and pay when I'm paying for food in my canteen, because I don't have my bag with me or my wallet, etc. And I'm going down and I have to charge my kind of payment card, and it's like I don't have anything else with me, so I will use my phone. But I won't take my phone out at a Woolworths. I'll always take out my card. And the perception for me is, okay, I'm handling my phone now. I have to do multiple steps. I have to use my finger for authentication. I have to maybe enter a PIN. So there's more interaction points for me. So I don't usually like it that way. And then cash, the car guard, I want to reward him, or even the guy at who's filling my vehicle with fuel, I'll pay cash. And so I use all of the payment types in their particular use case. And I think that we need to understand what customers are doing in that particular use case. What are your thoughts on biometric payment authentication and the merchant's view in reducing fraud and chargebacks? So let me just deal with fraud and chargebacks first. I'm not sure that we all appreciate how well the payments industry has managed card risk and fraud. And with EMV and PIN management and two-factor authentication, there is very, very little fraud in our systems, and most of us can contract out of it from a merchant point of view. So maybe the smaller merchants don't have that experience, but fraud and chargebacks is not actually an issue in terms of card. And so maybe we need to look at understanding what that process is for non-card payments. But to address the first part of the question about biometrics. So I think we saw it through COVID, right? It's been fascinating. The one thing that I really appreciate about COVID is I've never seen cash tills and card machines so clean. Before that, nobody cared. They were grimy, they were black. Nobody ever cleaned them or wiped them clean, etc. And so one of the challenges that we've seen with biometrics for the people that have attempted to use it is that they get really dirty and grimy quite quickly. And it's around how we manage that those are maintained and supported, that they're actually effective and effective for the long term. because in retail we're pretty harsh on our environment. Our customers are harsh on our environment. The way that the trolleys are dealt with at our till points, some retailers, including ours, the cashier's on the same side as the customer. And so there's a lot of hands and movements and stock, and the size of stock impacts those devices. So, from a technology point of view, does it work? Absolutely. Is it practical in terms of multi-lane retail being used on a very regular basis? I'm not sure yet. Okay, I'm going to take one more question. Okay, so this is a great one. I'm not sure I know how to answer it, but I will try. Cash crosses cultural boundaries. Do we need to be more aware of culture in designing payment solutions? So I'm not sure it's so much about culture, or maybe it is, around the belief system around money and what people think about money, what it means to them. Does it give them dignity? Does it give them certainty? Does it define who they are? Does it define their status, etc.? And I think if we're asking those questions to say, when you're paying with goods or when you were interacting with a banking app, how do you want us to deal with you? And maybe it's around how we deal with them in language, maybe it's how we deal with them in color, and also the clarity of costs and what their money is doing or what it looks like in the app at the time. So thank you very much, everybody, for your attention. It was great to be here today, and thanks for the opportunity.